Now they're taking experiences and showcasing it in the advertising.
Yep.
About, shot with iPhone.
Yeah.
So that it's basically taking experiential marketing and turning it into advertising as a way of reinforcing the brand love. Hi, I'm Matt Egol, host of the CX and Culture Connection, the podcast for leaders looking to drive impact by focusing on customer experience and culture together. I'm excited to talk today with Dave Sommer, who is an SVP at Bazaarvoice, the leading platform connecting thousands of brands and retailers to the voices of their customers. Previously, Dave was the head of U.S. verticals at Snap, and before that, he was the head of CPG and retail partnerships and shopper marketing at Facebook. Thanks for joining us today, Dave.
It's great to be here, Matt. And you and I go back a long ways, all the way back to business school at Columbia. So it's really good to see you and be together.
Absolutely. I've really enjoyed interacting over our careers, and we've had shared interests. And I've been involved in the shopper marketing and e-commerce and brand spaces from the consulting side, and you really blazed a trail on the kind of SaaS company side and media company side. So it's really good to share perspectives today with the audience.
Absolutely. I enjoyed watching you on some of the biggest stages at shopper marketing and all kinds of events on digital and technology. So it's great to compare notes at this point in our career too.
Absolutely. And likewise, I've always enjoyed seeing you at events as well. So you have a lot of experience at Facebook, Snap, and now with Bazaarvoice, building out joint business partnerships for how brands collaborate with retailers and media companies. How has the way companies build brands through experience evolved? And what do you see as some of the most exciting opportunities ahead?
Sure. And for a second, I'll just go way back. I grew up in the supermarket business. My father was a food broker in upstate New York. So we sold groceries to Price Chopper, Wegmans, Tops. And I never thought that experience would be very valuable in my career, but understanding what you can do at retail. So in the beginning, it was where you can do floor ads or shelf talkers or feature and display activity. But all of that has kind of come together. If you think about the classic Venn diagram where you've got the consumer on top and then you've got both retailers and brands touching that consumer, most of my career has focused on that area. And then to your question specifically, how has it evolved? Well, in the old days, it was, again, where you could buy in-store performance because all there was brick and mortar. And at the highest level, and we can unpack this more, in the digital world, now it's the digital shelf. And how can brands win at the digital shelf, or how can they win in their digital media? So if you're interested, we can talk a bit more about that and what that evolution looks like.
There's a common theme across a lot of your experiences, and not just around shopping and consumer behavior. It's conversations, really, because you think about a lot of the early days of shopper marketing and retail. One of the biggest drivers was word of mouth and conversations, and brands would focus on building their brand with advertising and then activating it. People talk about brand building and then activation, and then conversations among shoppers was really important to build community around the brand and grow the brand. But a lot of those conversations were in the physical world and not in the digital world. But now you've worked at Facebook, Snap, and now Bazaarvoice are the leading platforms in which conversations happen now. And those digital footprints are now visible.
That's a great way to think about it. That's a great framework. In the old days, you would hear about a new product from a friend. They would tell you how much they loved it. Or maybe the store manager would say, Mrs. Jones, you come in. I know you're going to like this product. Try it. And now it's much more word of mouth at scale. And that's really what the early days of Facebook were. So I joined Facebook in 2011 when we were just building how brands can communicate with shoppers and with consumers. And in the early days, there was just ads on the right-hand side. So I was there when we said, okay, let's move them into the news feed and make them feel more organic in people's feed. So it feels more like a brand is a personality talking to the shopper. So that's kind of the story for both my years at Meta, so Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and then Snapchat as well. And the reason I've joined Bazaarvoice now is because of that conversation and content point that you bring up. It's more and more important for brands to have word of mouth at scale, talking about the benefits of their product, showing that they're a leader. And I'll just give you one very specific example. So a brand could spend a lot of money on top of funnel marketing, running traditional advertising. But then when the consumer goes to Walmart.com or Target.com to actually buy, they're going to look and see how many stars the product has. Does it have, just to get super tactical, does it have 2 stars? Does it have 5 stars? Or how many reviews it has? And I could show you examples where, again, a big brand drives all the traffic to buy at e-commerce. But then when you get to that product detail page, if it doesn't have the right number of stars, the right number of reviews and good reviews, the person won't buy because they're looking for that confirmation from real people that they enjoyed the product.
Dave, you make a really good point about the importance of, driving conversion with great content. I mean, in the physical store, a great display can have a 300, 400% lift. So you have people talk about stop, hold, close, or, shopper solutions. We both worked in that space where you have the right content with the right call to action, the right emotional connection has enormous impact on getting people to stop, engage. And now there's video content and people are engaging with their phones. So there's even more competition for attention in the store, but there's all these opportunities to drive conversion with emotionally engaging content. And there's opportunity in digital as well. And the analogy with the digital shelf is a really good one. In my work with retailers, having the right content, like review content, can double your conversion online.
That's exactly right. And the types of content are changing. There's becoming more different ways. So if you think about our core business, most people listening to this probably know Bazaarvoice, and they probably think ratings and reviews. And the way I joined, I was on the advisory board. And so I got to know the company. And then the leadership team said, well, actually, we're moving into these adjacent businesses. We've created this new product called Bazaarvoice Vibe, which is, if you think about Bazaarvoice business, there's kind of buckets and pipes. And the buckets are all the types of content you could put in. So the most basic would be people writing a review of a product. I liked Crest White strips. It made my teeth white. And it worked really well for me. So a ratings and review or a 5-star rating. But now, as you mentioned, there's video, there's photos, and all of that content can be put in the bucket, and then it can be syndicated out to lots of different places. So the ones I mentioned so far were Walmart.com, Target.com, but we've built the capability now to syndicate that content out to my old home, which was Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, all those different places, and then a single dashboard to measure how each piece of content is converting. So exactly what you described. And we think that ultimately, I mean, the reason I joined full time and kind of came back into this world was my excitement about the need for a solution like this.
And we're talking a little bit here about some of the big names in grocery and mass, but and then the media companies too. But just so the audience has a sense of the breadth, pretty much anything other than Amazon is where Bazaarvoice is. So it's, like Home Depot or other categories, and beyond grocery and drug and mass. So it's a very broad set of retailers, and now the media universe as well. So if you want content to be liquid and linked, you need to spread it around. That's Wendy Clark's old phrase, right? The Bazaarvoice is really a great platform to not only provoke and generate the content, that great user-generated content, but then syndicate it. And then one thing I'm sure we'll talk about too is not only creating ways to activate around the content, but also to build insights in how people actually engage and interact around the content.
Yep. And thank you for mentioning kind of the broad syndication network. As you referenced, Bazaarvoice can automatically plug in with those pipes to every retailer, with the exception of Amazon. Amazon's a little bit different, but with the exception of them. And I think that is critical. When we think about the business, we think about kind of crown jewels of the business. And one is the syndication network. And the other, I would say, is authenticity and moderation. We are the biggest player. We can look at reviews and make sure there's nothing inappropriate. So when a big brand wants to make sure that everything people are saying about them or the videos they're making about their product are appropriate, we can moderate and make sure it's brand safe and authentic. And so I would say those are kind of our two main crown jewels. And then the next thing we've added is the ability to source all kinds of content from everywhere. We've bought several different companies. one that allows you to pull in creators. So if you want to, using AI, search for the right type of creator. Let's say you make a shampoo that makes your hair beautiful and shiny, but you want a natural look. You can type in there, find me creators or influencers that have a natural hairstyle, and it'll pull them up. And then, of course, you can brief them through our tool, through Vibe, on what types of pictures we want to see, what types of videos, things we'd like to hear them respond to. And all of that can go into this content hub called Bazaarvoice Vibe on our platform.
So I'd like to kind of dive into this for a minute and make sure like I understand it and the audience understands it fully. You're basically not just provoking content that you can then syndicate as a review to Walmart or other sites, but basically provoking and driving the creation of content by influencers. And you can find the right influencers and help nudge them and give them the information they need to create the right content. And then you'll keep the machine spinning, the wheel spinning.
It's 100% it. You nailed it. And part of it is even in some cases sending sampling out. So that sounds a little old fashioned, sending a box of samples out to somebody. But we bought this company called Influencer. And with it is an app where we've gamified it. So they actually get rewards for taking pictures with the products, for making videos, and also for writing reviews. And that's a massive source of content. So as you kind of reference, brands need more and more content. Like that's a huge problem. Different parts of their org need content, whether it's their sales team working with the key retailers or the brand team or the media team. And we have one central platform that's a hub for creating content, generating content, being able to display it, and then measuring it.
You can think about taking what worked in the physical world and bringing it to the digital world. You know, in the past, you can think about sampling in the store, demos in the store, people spraying perfume, walking down the aisle in a department store, blow-ins in a magazine to give people samples or things you can scratch and sniff. All of these things are still can work in the right context. But what Dave's talking about is a way to bring them and modernize them so they're digitally engaging, and you can achieve a lot of the same emotionally engaging experiences in a digital environment in a way that taps into kind of influencer marketing and people's organic energy.
And it gets unwieldy because in some cases, a big brand will want to use 1,000 different influencers. And to keep track of what the rights are to use that piece of content and how long it's good for, all of it gets tagged in this one platform. So that's a big pain point that we're solving for our partners. It's not just the bucket and the pipes, but also all the mechanics around it. So it's an exciting time to be in this space because everything has moved over to digital or omni-channel where the lines are blurring. You can measure a lot more about what's converting. And we believe we are kind of the blue chip player in this gathering of content, housing and displaying it, and optimizing it.
I like to think that, the model's flipped a lot, Dave. And I'm not going to say something you find a little too provocative being from the media industry historically, but I think the brand model is flipping now, and it's not that advertising is not useful, but in the past, people would build brands with great advertising and great creative, and then they look to activate it down the funnel. Whether you talk about compressing the funnel or through the line or whatever phrase you want to use, I think what's actually happening now is a lot of the brand now is actually built through experience. And then it's increasingly activated through the advertising. So look at Apple as a great example. Think different. One of those iconic campaigns, like building the brand through advertising and then activating it later through experience. Now they're taking experiences and showcasing it in the advertising.
Yep.
About, shot with iPhone.
Yeah.
So that it's basically taking experiential marketing and turning it into advertising as a way of reinforcing the brand love.
I love that. And I haven't thought about it exactly how you're describing it, but at a high level, think about the old days. When I first started my career, I was at Young and Rubicam. It isn't even around anymore. Now it's VML, Y&R, part of WPP, but we made TV commercials and we would bring the CMO into a dark conference room and we would say, get ready. We're about to show you the TV spot. And his heart would get pumping or her heart. And we would show the TV spot. And then we would say, okay, now how are we going to reach lots of people with that TV spot and pay a lot of money for paid media? And I think it has flipped on its head because now you actually have real people or influencers that are a lot like real people have an experience as you describe it, and then it creates like a little flame, and then you can pour gasoline on that flame and make it bigger. And that type of authentic marketing is what works really well. And there was kind of fits and starts when I was at Facebook with organic or earned media. At points, we would say things like likes don't pay the bills. Like your goal shouldn't be to see how many likes you can get on a piece of content. But I will say that over time, as consumers have paid more and more attention to user generated or influencer generated content, it is driving ROI. It is driving sales. So I'm with you.
Well, I think there's a few implications around what we're talking about, particularly with AI now. I think one is that you can amplify success. So you can find the influencers that matter, you can find the content that matters, and then amplify it. That's part of what was really successful at Facebook was to boost the story, to basically to take what's working and make it even more visible, right? That's why you want it organic and paid to increase your maximum reach of your stories. But and now what we see, what you're talking about with Vibe, is essentially provoking the generation of the right content and finding ways to amplify the story. And you're building your brand not only through the experience people have, but then amplifying that story through your advertising. I think we're talking about analytics and targeting and then personalizing the experience with AI. I'd like to share an example that I'm sure you have examples of what you can do with your products at Bazaarvoice that are similar to this. So I worked with a travel client, and we took the personas that we developed for them, where we used in-depth interviews and surveys and other research tools to understand the way people engage on the journey and like who are their ideal customers and what are their motivations and emotions and so forth. And we tried to make that more data-driven too, so that we could figure out how to target these personas and turn them into segments. And what got fun with AI is we actually found that we could use AI to listen to the conversations they were having with the customers across different touch points, to mine them for insights, as well as other data sets like first, second, third-party data. And then we could predict which persona someone is. And we actually found that we could, with a limited amount of data, you couldn't do it in the first conversation, but we could actually say this person is this persona. And then we would map the customers to the personas with data and then give it back to Facebook and other platforms for better lookalike analysis. Then we had even more fun with it, Dave. Then we actually generated more versions of the advertising through the eyes of the personas with the AI, created more versions of the content using the AI through the eyes of the persona. And then that's the content we used in the creative with A/B testing and dynamic content optimization back through our advertising. And we got a 50% lift in the marketing ROI by doing this. And now they're applying this not only in their advertising to roll it out more, but looking to do it in the website and the loyalty programs and the mobile app and any experience. So I think the same principle with the new tools we have can also be applied to what we do with user generated content or other things. And we're just at the first innings of this game for how to drive lift. In fact, Bazaarvoice used to do things, I'm sure you still do it now, where you would take the content and embed it in ads, and you end up with a higher lift.
That's a great example. Yeah. I mean, at the most basic level, I talked about my background with the physical store, even shelf talkers. So things that hang on the shelf in a supermarket. If you add 4-star, 5-star ratings and a quote from a consumer, all of a sudden it brings that word of mouth to life and drives it. And we're doing that same thing in the digital world. But I love your travel example. I've worked in this space a long time. I think that embodies a lot of the best practices. And you had asked about, insights. We sit on a treasure trove of insights. So when I look at partnerships, and one of the things that I built for Meta was JBPs, joint business plans, joint business partnerships, things that really align two companies' goals. And that's what I'm spearheading at Bazaarvoice. So I'm working with our largest partners to say, how do we build a joint business partnership that truly gives you strategic advantage? And part of that is insights, is being able to dive into what people are saying that could lead to a new product launch or changing the flavor profile or understanding a different consumer need state that you're satisfying. But if you think about this framework for Bazaarvoice 5 of source, amplify, and optimize content, insights would probably be a layer that sits under all of those things. Who should you source content from? Who should you amplify it to? And then again, what things perform the best so you can optimize?
Absolutely. And what you're highlighting is, you know, for some people who maybe they've approached this from another lens, they might think we're used to mining ratings and reviews for insights, or we're used to mine as a source of insights. That's, by the way, it's not a new thing. I wrote an article with the CEO of Bazaarvoice, Brett, years ago about like how to mine reviews as insights. So like he's a few CEOs ago, but it's like it's not a new phenomenon. But like you guys are taking it turbocharged now about opportunities, and it's a broader set of content conversations you can mine for insights than just the 5-star review.
Yep. What's old is new in some ways, right? As things become digital or more widespread. I'll tell you another thing, which I'd be interested in your take on, is retail media. Obviously, that's a huge growth in the media space. And one of the things that we've been noticing is that the content that's on the PDP, on the product detail page, which includes the ratings and reviews and the stars, actually becomes the ad in retail media. So working with key retailers on how do we create some synergy there? How do we create a best practices playbook for big brands? So how do they win in retail media as well?
Well, I think, you talked about the shelf talker, you could talk about the shelf edge ads. There are all kinds of, inventory, to use advertising speak, that we could optimize the content, where basically everything is inventory now for the audience who aren't ad geeks like us. If you think about advertising, there's a certain number of minutes in a TV show, there's a certain number of spots on a website. Inventory is a receptacle to place an ad. And in fact, in a digital world, everything is inventory, even all content. What you're doing is optimizing the insertion real time of content, leveraging data. And Bazaarvoice is the number one platform to create and syndicate content. They're basically fostering more and more of the right content in the right place at the right time,
Right.
that you can then optimize the insertion of the content to what is personalization? It's this content insertion at the right time, leveraging data. And what we're talking about now is how do you provoke the creation of the content and then amplify it, as well as in some cases create it yourself with AI. And I think we're going to see a fusion of creating content that learns from what the influencers and the consumers do.
We're already doing that with some of our products. But this idea that knowing where they are in the shopper journey. So if you think about the full funnel, right? Top of the funnel is building awareness. Bottom of the funnel is conversion. There's a bunch of steps that the consumer takes, but knowing where they are, even by what they're doing online, and then having AI serve up just the right piece of content into that inventory slot, or just the right message from a fellow consumer. It could be something as simple as 3 other people in your area just bought this product. We have a product that does that as well. It serves it up live while you're in the shopping experience. So I think that idea of what you're saying, that there's just lots of different inventory, lots of different ways to reach people. And it's knowing personalization at scale, is knowing what to serve up.
Well, and coming back to joint business partnerships and collaboration, that's what shopper marketing really is. It's brand retailer collaboration, where the brands work with the retailers or media partners increasingly, to develop experiences that provide solutions to the shopper, a consumer who's in shopping mode. And these are often content-based, right? So you need an insight to deliver the right content that drives an emotionally engaging experience. And if you think it from a customer journey standpoint, the peaks and valleys in the journey
Yep.
are where there's emotional resonance, either good or bad. It's meaningful and memorable. And if the emotions are stronger, ideally good emotions. And when you design a journey, you're trying to build insights on what emotions you want, where in the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're building great content experiences, and the brands will collaborate with the retailers to create these. And that's what Dave does. You're innovating in Facebook, Meta, then Snap, and now Bazaarvoice, about innovating around how to make collaboration more powerful.
I take that as a huge compliment. I think that has been a through line for my whole career. And as I said, working in my father's business as a food broker, that's kind of where it started. but understanding how both retailers and brands want to touch consumers or shoppers is the key. And I'll just give you a very specific example that always lands for people. If you go to a retailer and you say to them, well, based on your trading area, you're not getting your fair share of, let's say, baby care sales, right? You're not selling enough diapers based on your size in the market to a retailer. And then you take a big baby supplier, so maybe Procter & Gamble with Pampers or maybe Kimberly-Clark with Huggies, and you work with that retailer to make your baby section shine better, to make sure it grabs people's attention. All of a sudden, you've achieved what the brand wanted, what the retailer wanted, and given a service to the consumer as well. So that's really that sweet spot in that Venn diagram that I've been describing.
Yeah, and if for the audience, if you like this content, I'd encourage you to, we're talking about this, to like and subscribe. And you could also, I also like, Dave, to point out some other episodes people might like to check out that have similar themes. If they like this discussion, to go to some others. One would be to check out my conversation with Neil Hoyne, the chief strategist at Google, because we talked a lot about like customer lifetime value and how to optimize content, not just in advertising, but in other experiences and experiment, which is, Dave's talking about how to drive great experiences with content and build a culture of experimentation around that with the right data, the right content, the right insights, the right people. Another one is my episode with Aaron Shapiro, who is the founder of Huge. And he launched another agency recently called Product with some of the folks like Chris Stempy who is now the CEO of Product, who was at Huge as well. And Dave, I'm actually collaborating with Product. And, I built Booz Digital in the past, which was like to change strategy to involve more like design thinking and rapid prototyping and data-driven approaches. We hired a lot of startup and agency people to pair with the strategists. And now I'm actually partnering with Product so that when I work on the strategy and the upfront, experience and the culture of how do you build a culture of experimentation, Product can help build out the experiences with AI. So I'm not building my own agency. I'm basically partnering with Product.
Well, I think there's a great opportunity for us to partner as well. I mean, the number one question I get from a CMO or even a CEO is, I feel a little overwhelmed. There's so many places I can source content. There's so many MarTech vendors kind of coming at me. And so what I usually say is, let's start with three simple things. Number one, let's benchmark your full funnel path to purchase. Like, let's say you're a 3 and you could be a 10. A 10 meaning you've optimized everything. You've got the right number of ratings and reviews. You've got good content along the way. And then that's number one is kind of benchmark. Number two is let's create a playbook based on your category, based on your brands. What does great look like? What does a 10 look like? And how do we get there? And then the last is let's measure and optimize along the way. And if we want, let's deploy third-party resources, whether it's reach, resonance, or reaction. So reach would be how many people did you reach with this piece of content? Resonance is did you move the needle on how they think of the brand? And reaction could be things like did they buy either a sales lift study or MMM?
How has the approach to like insights synced up at all with things like customer listening or other ways that you're trying to really build insights around the customer? How do you take your insights at Bazaarvoice and combine them with other sources of insights to make them even more powerful?
I think that's a rich area for us to continue to grow, but I think retailers have a lot of information and they'll start usually by asking a question. And it could be something like, are we getting our fair share of baby? Or it could be, how do consumers perceive our fresh food offering? Or how do they perceive our electronics department, price-wise or quality or service? And then we work with them to understand the ratings and reviews, and they incorporate other things they've learned from all their touch points in store, which could be things they said to a store representative or things that they wrote on the store's website themselves. So it all kind of blends together, and then we're able to tease out insight.
To share with the audience, I think what you're saying is you start with a business problem you're solving for whether it's a retailer or a brand, and in the case of the retailer, like they want to grow their baby category. They think there's a fair share gap or something they want to grow there. And you're creating some insights from your data sources, which is, mining the content, mining the conversations, billion plus conversations, lots and lots of conversations in your network. And they have data sets too. And to bring it back to retail media, I think what's so exciting about retail media is it's so data driven. You have so much additional insight about how people are engaging in the category and then how they're engaging in the media too, that you can target the solution much better, more targeting with the right content. And your opportunity in retail media is you're really well positioned to help make sure they're not only the right insights, but the right content included in the advertising.
100%. I mean, I was early, and you mentioned this to me when we were emailing before the interview, to retail media. In 2006, I sold a business to WPP called Retail Media Link. And it was literally a database of things you could do with key retailers. One could argue that if I had held on to that, I could have been like the first, Walmart Connect or the first Amazon Connect. But I moved into Facebook and I moved into Snapchat and other digital players. But I think it's evolving so quickly and it is so data driven. You can't take it as just the literal, hey, did we serve up in a search ad and did it drive more conversion? Because it has broader implications than that. But I think people are still figuring it out.
Yeah, it's funny, like one of the first projects I worked on when I launched JourneySpark after I left PwC to launch my own firm was a strategy for the CEO of an agency for retail media. Right. So it's like I was doing work in that area when I was at PwC and Booz before it. Um, and then like my very first client engagement when I left to form my own firm was in the retail media space because it's a hot space right now.
It is a hot space. And I think that there's a tension there also because some of it feels like retailers asking brands for money, right? Like they did for slotting fees, just to use the most outdated example. I think the key is how do you make it a win-win? And that goes back to the JBP process. How do you start with a business challenge and a real insight and find something that's a win for the brand, for the category, for the retailer, as well as for the consumer? And that's why we built this platform. And source, amplify, and optimize content is something that adds value for the retailer. It adds value for the brand as well as the consumer.
So one of the things we've touched on a little bit in this conversation, I want to go a little bit deeper, Dave, is this idea of experimentation and how you can drive that. I like to think about building a culture of experimentation. I think of the CX and culture connection, which is the name not only of the podcast but of my book. But why CX and culture connection? Because customer experience is around both the way your employees show up during the journey, which creates those emotionally engaging peaks, but also the way you experiment and drive new experiences like we've been talking about in this conversation with digital and data and AI. You want to build a culture of experimentation, of agility, of collaboration, of curiosity, like insert your adjective. How do you think about like culture? And how do you think about the work you're doing and how it enables new ways of working and collaboration of brands and retailers that's a catalyst to evolve their cultures?
A couple things on that. I love experimentation and I'm a huge believer. And also, so I built my reputation in this business building JBPs, but also driving growth for the companies that I work for. So I'll let you in on a little secret. When I'm looking to drive growth at a big house of brands, yes, I look for a pain point, right? Something where somebody's in pain and what we're selling can solve that problem. So it might be they need content for the full funnel. But the other thing I look for is somebody who wants to experiment, somebody who doesn't want to just punch in and do their job and get out. I need an evangelist. I need somebody who's willing to try something. And then to the last part of your question, how does our platform facilitate it? We believe that the truth will set you free. So measure everything. So we are tagging every single piece of content that you might use any place you use it. And then we give you a dashboard where you can see how it's driving against results. Now, we still have a long way to go with our measurement. We'd love to tie everything to sales in brick and mortar also. So you showed a piece of content. The online part is fairly easy. You can do conversion through pixels and other things and API connections, but actually matching it up and doing in-store sales lift is a little more challenging. We have a couple things running right now, but with the right innovative partners, that culture of experimentation backed up by data can be very successful.
Where are things headed with Bazaarvoice? What are some of the areas that you're most excited about that you're involved in?
Yeah, so I talked about kind of buckets and pipes, right? Buckets of content and pipes to push it out. We weren't originally connected to all the social platforms, right? When you thought of Bazaarvoice, it was hey, get a lot of ratings and reviews and 5-star ratings and push them out to retailers. Now we're able to push it into TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. So really, really excited about it. And then I would say I could talk about each of the components, like sourcing creators, sourcing influencers, or tagging everything and having the usage rights. But the magic is really that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So because we're the biggest player, and that's one of the things I look for when I join a new company, it's good to be with the number 1 or 2 player who's able to innovate and has the funding. So we're in a position we can offer more than anybody else right now. And it's just with our biggest partners creating that right relationship that throws off a lot of value.
I'm going to make it personal for a second, but like when I mentioned, I wrote that article with the CEO of Bazaarvoice a number of years ago, and I was enjoying collaborating with Bazaarvoice. And I had launched this digital leadership council. Bazaarvoice was part of it. You know, we had these like dinner salon meetings, and then we got acquired by PwC, which audited Bazaarvoice. So all of a sudden I couldn't collaborate anymore with Bazaarvoice, but now I'm not at PwC anymore. So let's collaborate.
I'm with you. I would love to work with you. I mean, you and I can finish each other's sentences. We've both been in this space a long time, and we know a lot of the same people, and we know a lot of the same companies, and I think it's a natural. And I think we're both people who take the long view as well. You know, I have no interest in selling something that a client's not going to use or not going to benefit from. It's just, the business becomes very small when you're where we are. So where do we find real pain points? Where do we help solve them with ideas that you have and maybe products that we have? And then how do we bring it to market together?
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. Any other words of wisdom for the audience before I let you go today?
I guess I would just reiterate one more time that if you're feeling overwhelmed by this new world where there's massive content needs, so if you're feeling overwhelmed by it, our simple solution is put it all in one place where you can source, amplify, analyze, and measure it. Like that's the key. And that's what Bazaarvoice Vibe is. Because I still encounter a lot of people who are like, aren't you that ratings and review company? Is that all that you have? And we're much more than that now. And part of my job is to get the word out. So thanks for giving me a microphone. I don't have this one like yours yet, but I like that microphone. But I want to get the word out.
There you go. Well, Dave, I know you've sparked a lot of great ideas for me, and I'm sure you have for the audience, great ideas and energy, and really excited to continue the conversation. If folks want to get in touch with you, is LinkedIn the best way?
Yeah, I really appreciate it. LinkedIn would be great. And then from there, I can connect with the right people. I'm mostly focused on our largest partners, but I still, as I say, I love people who want to experiment, who want to innovate, who want to create case studies. So I've had a bunch of former CMOs at big companies now, I'm sure you have this too, who are at smaller companies, either it's a CEO or another position saying, hey, will you help me? I'll give you a great case study. I'll go on stage for you. And yep, I'm open for that too.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Dave. Have a great day.
Okay, thanks, Matt.